I also think it's so way past time to be against something, and so way past time to start being for something. And we have. Together, we've built some amazing things. But we have to convince the rest of the world, after we've convinced all of our neighbors and even our own family members, that we are the people. And now is the time to fix things. And we can. There is reason to have great optimism. The things that are just over the horizon are incredible. They will be written about in history books one way or another, good or evil, disaster or miracles are right over the horizon, and we will be remembered for which one we choose. What's coming over the horizon is nothing compared to what we've seen. We're about to cure cancer. Now, maybe you don't believe that because it hasn't happened yet. It's overwhelming. But we've already cured disease beyond people's wildest imagination. We cured polio, and we administer it with a sugar cube. We can crack somebody's chest open and give them a replacement heart. 2 weeks ago, my wife was in the hospital, and she had to have exploratory surgery. I hadn't heard somebody having exploratory surgery in I don't know how, since I was a kid. You just open them up and see what's wrong? Really? That doesn't sound like a good idea. You don't have to do that anymore because of CAT scans and MRIs. When my dad was a kid, he said he didn't think he would ever go to the moon, that people would never do that. We've been there and back several times. Voyager just left our solar system. The Wright brothers 100 years ago were on a field trying to get off the ground. Man had been trying to do that since the beginning of time. It happened here in America. Don't tell me we can't do it. Don't tell me now is not the time. We will change the world. Now is the time. We are the people. We will do amazing things. Cancer is just the beginning. I know 3 American hospitals that are on the verge of curing all cancer right now. 3 of them. It is going to happen if we don't blow it. Now, how do we blow it? By choosing to give away our individual creativity and power. To settle for the crumbs instead of the promise of the future. This election, you have to decide. Are you a cancer-curing person, or are you somebody who says, I just want to have what I have? What we have now is crap. It's not good enough. It was built by another generation. It's time for this generation to build. But don't tear down, build up. See, I am an optimist. I have been pessimistic for a long time, which is highly unusual for me. The last 7 years have been very unusual in my life. And I've been pessimistic because I have seen the patterns of history repeat. But I am at heart an optimist because I have seen the patterns of American history, and they're about to repeat again. Know this, a better tomorrow is coming, but it is not pain-free. And it's not free of action either. Regardless what happens November 6th, things will still get tougher before they get better. We're doing a show on Friday that I don't want you to miss. It's on Israel. It has been a year now, I can't believe that, since restoring courage. The tension in the Middle East has only intensified. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad told worshipers just the other day, celebrating Quds Day, that the existence of the Zionist regime is an insult to all humanity. Oh. If he was just a crazy nut job with no influence, it'd be easier to overlook, but he's not. And Iran is making global alliances that, oh man, I wish Winston Churchill was here, because boy, would he be awake. There's a brand new axis of evil. So Friday, we're going to air a show that we recorded last night. I talked to a panel of top military leaders and CIA and Intel, and I just asked them, what is coming? I have to tell you, when these guys who you will really respect, one of the guys on my security team said, Is that who I think it is? I said, yeah. You know him? He's like, are you kidding me? The guy's a legend. I said, I know. These guys sat here right on that couch, and they actually told me the world's coming undone, and it's coming undone rapidly, and we could be in World War III in months. A serious possibility. None of them would say that was going to happen, but they were concerned. Everything they have to say will be on Friday's show, but tonight I want to talk to you about what you will not see on Friday's show, the conversation that happened after the cameras stopped rolling. As terrifying as some of the things these guys were talking about with global wars breaking out, I think it was more terrifying to hear them talk about something else. How does America react? If there's a banking crisis where the banks close for a month, if there is a real serious crisis and there's food shortages because there's a disruption in power, things will deteriorate so rapidly. How does America react? Unforeseen problems like droughts are going to become an increasing threat to global stability and to our stability. Food prices are skyrocketing. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, you've been to the store, you've been watching this show, you've been following it. Look around. I don't want to ask you about you. I want to take it up one level. What are the chances your neighborhood or your state is actually going to be prepared for when it all comes crashing down? Is anybody else in your neighborhood, is anybody in your state, is there a single representative or is your governor finding ways to be self-sufficient? Or are they just burning 1/3 of our corn to produce fuel? I want to tonight give you an action step that you can take. I want you to call your state representative and ask them, are you doing anything in case of a severe food shortage or economic collapse? Is our state doing anything? Is your plan to ask for a bailout from the federal government and wait till the FEMA trucks come? Or are you taking measures right now, like our parents and grandparents did in the 1950s and 60s with civil defense? They prepared themselves so they would be self-reliant and ready for anything. Boy, isn't this amazing that we would store food as a nation, all over the nation? That we would have things, water, food, everything ready in case the Soviet Union would blow us to kingdom come. But now that's crazy to think, hey, maybe we should all be prepared as a state. What are you doing to be ready for anything? What are your neighbors doing? What's your family members doing? Because it really goes back to this. Are you someone who believes that we are capable of great things and they're just over the horizon? That's pretty monumental. But the choice is, I just want my stuff. I just want my stuff. I just want my scraps. I just want to maintain. That's not good enough. We're Americans. We have to lead. I moved to Texas because I want to live in a state that thrives, not survives, thrives. I want to live in a state that leaves me alone and lets me fail or succeed, because failure is just as important as success. I want to live in a state that is an economic beacon to the rest of the world. What do you think Texas is? Who else is doing what Texas is doing right now? People are moving in from all over the country and the world to Texas. Why? Because they leave people alone to create. When you leave people alone and you encourage them to be good, amazing things happen. I want to live in a state like that. And I want to live in a state that is so well prepared that it will help the other states when they're falling apart. See, that's the way it works. The trickle-down theory does work, except in an emergency. It doesn't work that way in an emergency, especially a global crisis. It starts with you and your home. The next is, how's your neighborhood? What are your neighbors going to be doing? If your neighbors are setting each other on fire, you're done. They're the first to come to your house and take everything you've prepared. So how's your neighborhood? And outside of your neighborhood, I mean, you might live in a gated community. Well, good for you. If your state is crazy, hello, Massachusetts, New York, and pretty much everything in New England, your gated community is done. And your country. And then the world. What's going to happen is all of this stuff is going to collapse, and everybody's going to look here, and they're going to look here. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is going to look here. It doesn't work that way. My theory from the beginning has been that as the economy gets worse, people are going to start pushing these problems higher and higher, which they already have. And before it gets better, it's going to get worse. I don't see how we miss a bubble bursting. But we can only delay for so long before it happens, because that's natural. As the dominoes start to fall, they'll push for bigger and bigger government, and structure will come. You don't want the structure. You don't want to be living in an area where people are begging for the structure because they can't make it on their own. The real solution is to get smaller. But here's the catch. That solution doesn't work if you aren't ready to take care of yourself. Can you be a shelter for others who haven't properly braced for the storm? The answer is no, unless your neighbors are like that. There is a storm brewing. And you know it if you just go to the store. Corn and soybean prices hit yesterday highs, record highs. We told you this would happen a year ago. You know it. You've been telling your friends. The main culprit, worse than expected crop damages from the drought. Stuff happens. Corn is now up 68% from June. You know, some farmers are feeding their cattle candy. I'm not kidding you. Soybeans are 39% higher. Crops in Ohio and eastern Indiana are far below normal. South Dakota says its output is stunningly low. According to Jim Rogers, he pointed to the increasingly crippling debt as a multiplying factor. He said, quote, in 2002, we had an economic slowdown, which was fairly serious. And then in 2007 and 8, we had another one, which was worse. Because the debt was so much bigger. The next time around, the debt is going to be that much more catastrophic. Only a matter of time. He added that even when the weather finally cooperates, it's not going to make things much better because, quote, we've consumed more than we've produced nearly every year over the last decade, so inventories are very low. And here's the most obvious problem. We're running out of farmers. They're getting old. The average age of a farmer in America is 58. I mean, have you ever tried farming? Oof. It's tough. Few students are even pursuing the profession. More people study public relations than agriculture. Government regulations are making it increasingly difficult for farmers to prepare their kids to one day take over for the farm. You can't have your kids work on the farm. You're not going to find many academic elites in their tweed jackets encouraging students to pursue farming. Oh, you could get dirty doing that. The most likely thing you'll hear about farmers in a college setting is that farmers are simple-minded. But here's the most disturbing thing Jim Rogers said. As far as I'm concerned, the election is irrelevant. There's very little difference in any of these guys. None of them understands the problem. These guys are the guys who got us into trouble. You expect them to get us out? It goes back here. Don't look to Washington to solve your problem. Look here to solve your problem. Now, I believe there's a little more difference than Jim alludes to. In fact, a lot more difference. I mean, one had a stepdad named Lolo, a grandma named Toto, and a pet monkey named Tata or something like that. And he was taken to see the demon-fighting monkey gods over the 4th of July picnics growing up. But I do agree that either way, a storm is going to hit. But I am optimistic because I do believe God is not neutral, and I do believe that Romney will listen to the promptings of the Spirit. I really believe that. And it will be God that will make the next Abraham Lincoln, not man. I also believe that we're going to be okay because of the steps we've taken to prepare. I know who you are. I've stored up extra food. I've moved closer to like-minded people. I have, educated my family. I have guns. I've got gold, whatever. But a lot of people have done that. A lot of people are so far ahead of me. It's aggravating, quite honestly. There's enough of Americans that will do the same. Be a lifeboat for others. So even if there is a storm, we'll be ready for it. That's where my optimism becomes realism. It doesn't come from the thought that Mitt Romney's going to ride in on a white horse or maybe drive in one of his wife's white Cadillacs and save the day and stop the storm. The storm is coming. But I feel a little like Noah. We make it. Tomorrow's not going to be pain-free. Things are going to be very, very different. We're used to having things a certain way. A new study shows that Americans toss out as much as 40% of our food, 20 pounds per person per month. Wow. That happens because we're spoiled. I tell my kids every day, finish your dinner, or I'm going to start doing what Grandma and Grandpa used to do. They used to put the plate above the refrigerator, and I'd eat whatever I left. I'd eat that the next morning for breakfast. You finish your food. We're used to fully stocked grocery stores and hundreds of restaurants to choose from, and having the money to go just a couple of miles from our home and get anything. Think of how ridiculous we are with food. I mean, I'll go 10 minutes without eating, and I'll be trolling around the kitchen and opening up the refrigerator. I'm hungry. With an exception of Adam and Eve, no man or woman in human history has had easier access to food than we do right now. We're also so high on technological heroin. We're spoiled rotten by an instant gratification culture, drunk on fame. We're now, half of us, addicted to free stuff from the government. 46 million people are now on food stamps. When the program started in the 1970s, 1 in 50 Americans were on food stamps. Today, it's 1 in 7. And that's not bad if people need it, but there are a lot of people that don't. And there's no shame involved in taking a little more than you need. Just like any heroin addict who tries to quit or has it taken from them, a spoiled brat who gets denied. I'm an alcoholic. I know. Coming off of these vices will be painful, and if you just stop them, it's even more painful. A lot of people who just stop whatever they're addicted to become violent. Is your state, is your neighborhood in a position to survive the withdrawal? Does your state have any assets in gold? Do they? What are your state's assets in, and where are they? Have they done like the University of Texas did? Get it out of the basement of the Fed and move it to the state. What good is it going to be if the Fed is bailing out the rest of the world and on the hook for stuff, and you don't, your people, your state doesn't have the actual access to gold? Why don't you move it to your state? Does your state have any resources? They have anything in storage? Or are they just going to beg for Obama cash? Are they just continually buying into the lie that we all know? If there is a disruptive day or two or week in food or the banking supply, if the banking system came to a grinding halt, would your state be able to provide any supply of food? Most likely not. California has been writing IOUs to its citizens for their tax returns. Good luck if you think California's covered for an emergency. But how about your neighbors? Are they thinking like you? The question this hopefully leads you to is, am I living in the right place? There's a survey that came out yesterday, and people talked about it on radio and television, but I don't think they talked about it in the right way. It's a way for you, honestly, to discover the answer of am I in the right place? This is a map of the most charitable states in the Union. Charitable states in red versus the least charitable states in blue. Look at this. The top most charitable states voted for McCain in 2008. the 7 least charitable states all voted for Obama. You may also notice that the more charitable states are also the states that tend to be more religious states. Not a coincidence. And in difficult times, you will also see a stark contrast. Let me ask you, these states here, and I contend actually it's more like this. It's the Mountain West and the South. And this is in real trouble. So is this. Although Washington and Oregon have more farmers, so it might not be so bad. But where would you rather be? Where do you think neighbors will take care of neighbors? Do you think it's going to be in the Northeast? The people living in those states whose sole idea of charity is paying taxes, they will turn to the government for help, and when the government won't help them or can't help them, they get mad. When there's not enough handouts for everyone, they turn against each other. Well, it's because you had too much, because you did this, because you did that, and tear each other apart. They haven't prepared themselves to be truly self-reliant because they don't depend on each other anymore. They don't have the faith that teaches them how to walk that way, which leaves people hopeless. I will tell you that the crash of '08, I toured the country, all over the country, and the place that was the most fearful, I traveled East Coast, West Coast, South, everywhere, was this belt. And the farther up north I got into New England, the more frightened they were and the more hopeless they were. The farther down south I got, or in the Mountain West, they knew they would be okay. If you have no hope, it's incredibly dangerous. The people in those states do have faith. They do believe God will protect them. They see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. They are filled with hope. And they have prepared themselves to be a lifeboat for others. They will care for one another. And let me give you a perfect example. I want to talk to you about a story that we are working on at the Blaze. We're working on a story on the drought. And this weekend, I was traveling around. I went to the Native American Navajo Nation, and I saw great despair. And we started talking about the despair with the farmers and the drought. And one of the guys who was with me, Mark Mabry, he said, I've got to go cover this. And, you know, we kicked angles around. And I said, you know, I don't want to see the despair. I want to see the hope. Well, he wrote to me last night and said, Glenn, I'm in Kansas, and boy, have I found a great story. Farmers recently gathered in Kansas at a summit where they talked about what's happening to them. The drought is the worst in half a century. Water is extraordinarily scarce. Now, in Kansas, here's how it's set up. There are senior farmers and junior farmers. I don't know the difference, but that's the way it's set up. Senior farmers have direct access to the irrigation system, and they take what they want and they need first. And the junior farmers, they just get whatever is left. Now, usually there's enough for everybody, but if there's not, the junior farmers have to take less. Well, this year, there's not even enough for the senior farmers. There's not enough water to bring in a full crop for the senior farmers. And so in some states, you would think that those senior farmers would just say, well, I got to have it. But here's what they've done. Without any kind of regulation, without any stimulus from Obama, the senior farmers, because they're themselves leaders, along with the junior farmers, the neighbors, the senior farmers have decided to give the junior farmers enough water to get a crop in. They're getting very little profits because of the reduced water supply. This agreement means they're going to get even less. But they're neighbors. And they know they're all in trouble now. And one way or another, they all have to hang on to each other because they're all in this together. A president can propose all kinds of programs that he wants, but they really never will work in the end because they don't truly bring hope. They don't inspire. A government can't mandate that America is going to be great. regulations and rules that force people to do things or else get arrested. Those things don't make us the shining city on the hill. All eyes, the eyes of the world, are upon us. We're about to have either our most humiliating failure or our most spectacular day. It's people like these farmers in Kansas who are willing to help others. They're competitors. Even though it means that their family, their farm, their neighborhood will suffer personal loss, they sacrifice because they want to. That gives me hope, because they are the kind of people that make America great. They are the reason I have optimism. Because I know a better tomorrow is around the corner. And it isn't pain-free. But I also know there are millions of people just like these farmers that will get us through whatever it is we need as friends, as family, as neighbors, and fellow countrymen. I've been talking to you tonight a little bit about optimism. And there's a difference between blind optimism and optimism for a reason. I mean, realism. I think I'm a realist. I know when there's trouble, and I know there's trouble ahead. But there's also a reason to be wildly optimistic, because I think there's about to be a change in leadership in this nation. And that's what we do, unlike any other nation, change leadership. It's peaceful. We don't kill each other. We don't have guns to escort the president in here. We have a change in leadership every 4 years or every 8, and it happens on January 20th. One president moves out of here, and a new president moves in. I talked to the head of the guy at the White House who does this move. It's an amazing thing. He had been working at the White House since Jackie Onassis, Kennedy, and all the way through George W. Bush. He left after George W. Bush. He was an older gentleman, and the stories he told me about the few hours in between, just those few hours, when the president writes his last message to the new president and leaves it on the desk, and then goes for the swearing-in ceremony and the parade. And by the time the president comes back from the parade, this is all done. It's quite a fascinating day. A crew comes into this office, and they do the fastest room makeover you've ever seen. And some things stay in this office, and some things don't. For instance, this desk, the Resolute desk, it stays. But everything else is turned over. They put in a new carpet. This carpet is the one we had made for the studio. It is the exact copy of the carpet that was made for George W. Bush. I know it very well because George Bush called me on this carpet right over in that area. I know it very well. You don't forget that moment standing in the Oval Office. This is not what the president's rug looks like now. It has words all the way around it now, and it's brown. But the president gets to choose the style. Light blue, dark, goldenrod, what do you want? Yellow? And they'll paint the walls any way you want, too. Cream, eggshell, taupe. President Obama has, I think, cream and brown stripes on his walls. They'll put in here whatever you want. All of the artwork that the nation owns, everything. New curtains, new photos, new furniture, whatever you want. They also move some things out, whatever the new president doesn't want. When Bush worked in this space, right over here, he had pictures of West Texas, paintings of West Texas. He said that the Western art kept him rooted. He had his own preferences. That's why the Remington, the guy on the horse, is right here. But when he left, they left the painting, but took this piece out. Obama had his own preferences when he came in. Obama came in, the Western art was taken off the walls. That was removed. And that's just the way it goes. New presidents have the right to choose their arts, fine. But not everything in this office is art. Some of what you see in the Oval Office reflects more than the artistic taste of the President of the United States. It reflects the worldview of the President. Which takes me to this piece here. The bust of Prime Minister Winston Churchill, one of America's greatest friends ever. Churchill was Great Britain's leader during World War II. He saw the war coming long before, and even the British didn't want to listen to him. They were dead asleep, and they wouldn't listen to him. He warned against appeasement of Hitler. And people said, "You're just a warmonger." He said, "They are building planes to destroy us," and no one would listen. His own party kicked him out. Both parties, he was a pariah. He went back home to paint. He thought his career was over. He appealed to America to support Great Britain in that great struggle after both parties asked him to come back. In 1941, Great Britain was alone in the war. America was still neutral. Well, Germany's planes routinely were bombarding London at night. Churchill wrote to the man who sat in this desk, a man who was in a wheelchair, Roosevelt. He wrote and he said, "Put your confidence in us. Give us your faith and your blessing. Under providence, we will be well. We shall not fail nor falter. We shall not weaken nor tire. Neither the sudden shock of battle nor the long-drawn trials of vigilance will wear us down. Give us the tools, and we will finish the job." Winston Churchill. He was supremely confident in America, more confident in America than America was in herself at that point. You see, Churchill's mother was an American. He had visited America, gotten to know her people, and he understood America. He believed in America. He knew America would have to enter the war to win, to be able to preserve freedom, because he believed America was a great nation, ready to take the role in the world. He was kind of like our British uncle, caring and familiar, but he was stern. And he was the lone voice in the world against weakness, against being timid, against surrender. After the war, after the victory, he warned us again. Don't let down your guard. And the same people that drove him out of office last time drove him out again. He gave the Iron Curtain speech. He described the Soviet domination over half of Europe and the moral evil of communism taking root everywhere. And his voice, like a warning uncle, was the voice we needed again in war and in peace. So after 9/11, when we were reeling, Great Britain's ambassador to the United States, acting at the request of the Prime Minister Tony Blair, gave this bust to the people of the United States. It wasn't a gift. It was a loan. We were to have it as long as we needed it, as long as it was necessary, to give strength and courage to inspire the man who sat at this desk in this office, to give him strength to ward off weakness when he was on the phone. He could look at the strength of the man, to remind him also that Great Britain would always be there, was always an ally, a special friend. But on January 20th, 2009, President Bush left, and President Obama moved in. And shortly thereafter, the British ambassador was told, "We don't need your Churchill anymore. We're giving him back. Here, take it. We don't want it." The British got the message all right. Could you not get the message? That whatever the lesson of Churchill, whatever he said to inspire America in war, in difficult times, in courageous defiance against aggression or dictators, all of that was done. All of that was in the past. All of that was over. America our new president might say, was ready to move forward, not be restricted by past promises, nor even by its founding documents at times, or its longest alliances. I wonder what Uncle Winston might have said about being kicked out of this room, kicked out of the Oval Office. Perhaps he would have seen it as inevitable. Churchill was a realist, after all. He understood human nature. America, like all nations, will go through periods of vigilance, followed by periods of weakness, the certainty of purpose, followed by periods of confusion. I suppose he would have recognized what kind of period we were entering into. And maybe he would have been resigned to his fate. I'm just artwork, he might say. I'm just a chiseled piece of marble. And in stony silence, I can do nothing. I can say nothing. My power depends on the living. And if they need me, if they want me, I'll be there. But if they don't, it matters not. Whether I sit on the shelves of the powerful, sit on the shelves of the most powerful man in the world to gaze upon, or on a dusty box in an ambassador's library, it doesn't matter. I'll be there when they're ready. I think Uncle Winston was correct. It really doesn't matter who sits over there. What matters is who sits there. Our leaders have a right to find inspiration wherever they find it in history, or somewhere else. But where they find that inspiration tells us who they are, what they like, what they believe, what's inside at the core. A president who values the example of Winston Churchill, who values having him in this office, is someone who understands history, understands what Great Britain means to and for America, and what America means for Great Britain. Someone who looks to that bust, values above all those immortal words of Winston Churchill: "We shall defend our island. Whatever the cost may be, we shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." Never, never surrender. Of course, to be inspired by those words, it means you must believe them to be true today, in here. Are we under attack? Is our nation at risk? Do enemies threaten us in our homes and in our streets? If you don't think so, then the words of Winston Churchill really are meaningless. Perhaps our current president thinks that the words of Churchill belong to history. They're no longer relevant. But just watch. History has a way of catching up. America is like Great Britain in the 1930s, powerful, but asleep. The threats are building. So, perhaps the current president thinks America is done with Winston Churchill. But Winston Churchill is not done with America. We'll need him again soon. And that's good news, because I think the next occupant of this office might just ask for that loan to be extended again. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for helping us build this network. May God bless you, and may God bless the Republic. From Dallas, good night, America.